Have you ever wondered about the devastating power of nuclear energy when it goes awry? Nuclear energy, the double-edged sword. On one side, it holds the promise of green, efficient energy, powering our homes, cities, and even spaceships. It's a beacon of hope in a world teetering on the edge of a climate crisis. But on the other side, it harbors a destructive force, one capable of untold devastation, the kind that scars the Earth and its inhabitants for centuries. Imagine the energy of the sun, harnessed and contained within towering reactors. It's a marvel of human innovation, a testament to our relentless pursuit of progress. But with great power comes great responsibility. So what happens when the control over this immense power slips from our hands? The answer lies in the story of Chernobyl, a tale of a disaster that cast a long dark shadow over the promise and peril of nuclear energy. The date was April 26, 1986, a day that would go down in history as one of the darkest in the annals of nuclear energy. In the early hours of that fateful day, under the seemingly quiet skies of Pripyat, Ukraine, a safety test was being conducted at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The test, ironically designed to ensure the safe operation of the plant, would set in motion a series of events that led to one of the most catastrophic nuclear accidents the world has ever witnessed. The test was planned to simulate a power outage to assess how long the plant's turbines would spin and supply power to the main circulating pumps, following a loss of main electrical power supply. However, due to a fatal combination of design flaws and operator errors, the situation swiftly spiraled out of control. As the reactor's power surged unexpectedly, the emergency shutdown failed. The reactor's operational instability, combined with the inherent design flaws of the RBMK-1000 reactor, led to a sudden and uncontrollable power surge. In a desperate attempt to shut down the reactor, the control rods were fully inserted, but this only exacerbated the situation. The rod's graphite tips displaced the coolant, causing the reactor's power to spike dramatically. Within a fraction of a second, the intense heat caused fuel rods to rupture, and a series of steam explosions blew the 1,000-ton cover plate off the reactor. An open-air graphite fire burned for 9 days, releasing radioactive particles into the atmosphere, which were carried over much of Western USSR and Europe. In the blink of an eye, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant became a nuclear nightmare. In the immediate aftermath of the explosion, a silent, invisible enemy began its deadly march. This enemy was none other than radiation, a force that doesn't discriminate, doesn't tire, and doesn't cease. The Chernobyl disaster released an estimated 200 times more radioactivity than the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. This radioactive dust was carried by the wind, contaminating the air, the water, the soil, and everything it touched. Unseen, unheard, it seeped into the homes of the unsuspecting people, clinging to their clothes, their skin, their very DNA. The effects were not immediate, but the clock had begun ticking for countless lives. At the heart of this silent storm were the brave first responders. Firefighters, police officers, and plant workers risked their lives to contain the disaster. Naive to the invisible enemy they were battling, they waded into a sea of radiation, armed with little more than basic firefighting gear and a profound sense of duty. They battled not just flames and wreckage, but an enemy that defied understanding, an enemy that could not be seen, smelled, or felt. Many of these heroes paid the ultimate price, their bodies ravaged by acute radiation sickness. Their sacrifice, however, went largely unacknowledged in the immediate aftermath, as the true extent of the disaster was shrouded in a veil of secrecy and misinformation. The lack of information was a tragedy in itself. It left the people of Chernobyl and the surrounding areas unprepared and unprotected. It delayed the evacuation, the medical help, the international aid that could have mitigated some of the damage. It allowed the invisible enemy to infiltrate deeper, to claim more victims, to sow the seeds of a disaster that would echo through generations. This invisible enemy, radiation, had just begun to show its true, terrifying face. The fallout from the Chernobyl disaster was not confined to the immediate vicinity of the power plant. Indeed, the nuclear nightmare that began in the heart of Ukraine soon spread its shadow across an entire continent. The invisible enemy that was the radioactive fallout did not respect borders or boundaries. Carried by the winds and the rains, this silent killer spread across Europe, leaving a trail of contamination in its wake. The spread of radioactive materials was indiscriminate and widespread. From the verdant pastures of Ireland to the snowy peaks of the Alps, no corner of Europe was spared. These materials, including deadly isotopes like cesium-137 and iodine-131, seeped into the soil, contaminating crops and livestock. The food chain, once a symbol of life's interconnectedness, became a conveyor belt of contamination, bringing the effects of the disaster to the dinner tables of millions. The human cost was significant. In the years that followed the disaster, there was a marked increase in cases of thyroid cancer, particularly among children exposed to the radioactive fallout. Many more suffered from a range of health conditions, from birth defects to heart diseases, the silent symptoms of an invisible enemy. The psychological toll, too, was immense, with communities living in fear of an enemy they could neither see nor smell. The environment, too, bore the brunt of the disaster. Forests and rivers, once teeming with life, became ghostly reminders of what once was. The rich biodiversity of these areas took a severe hit, with many species struggling to survive in the altered landscape. And so, the effects of the Chernobyl disaster were not limited to a single power plant, or a single city, or even a single country. Its reach was continental, its effects far-reaching, its legacy enduring. The disaster underscored the interconnectedness of our world in the most tragic of ways, reminding us that the actions in one corner of the globe can have ramifications far beyond its borders. The scars of Chernobyl were etched deep into the continent, affecting millions of lives. The disaster at Chernobyl was a wake-up call for the world. In the aftermath of the catastrophe, governments, scientists, and citizens alike were forced to confront the perils of nuclear energy. The veil was lifted, and the world was exposed to the harsh realities of what can happen when nuclear power goes awry. Internationally, the Chernobyl disaster sparked a massive overhaul of safety measures and regulations for nuclear power plants. Countries began to re-evaluate their reliance on nuclear energy, prompting a global shift towards implementing stricter safety protocols. Standards for plant design, operation, and maintenance were strengthened. Emergency response plans were revamped, with a heightened focus on preventing and managing potential nuclear accidents. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or IEA, played a pivotal role in this global response. The organization expanded its efforts to promote nuclear safety, leading initiatives to improve worldwide standards and practices. Nuclear inspections were intensified, and new conventions were established to ensure that countries would be better prepared for future nuclear incidents. But the changes weren't just confined to policies and procedures. The disaster also spurred on scientific research and technological advancements. Scientists around the world turned their attention towards developing safer and more efficient nuclear technologies. They sought to understand the long-term effects of radiation exposure to better prepare for and mitigate the consequences of such a disaster. Yet, even as the world strives to move forward, the efforts to contain the effects of the Chernobyl disaster continue. The region still grapples with the environmental and health impacts of the accident. Efforts to decontaminate the area, manage waste, and monitor the health of affected populations are ongoing, serving as a constant reminder of the disaster's enduring legacy. Chernobyl serves as a stark reminder of the risks associated with nuclear energy, a reminder that continues to shape our approach to this powerful source of energy. The shadow of Chernobyl looms large, a sobering testament to the potential dangers of nuclear power. Yet, it also underscores our capacity for resilience and change as we continue to learn, adapt, and strive for a safer future. More than 3 decades have passed since the disaster, yet the legacy of Chernobyl continues to loom large. This catastrophe has forever imprinted a harsh lesson in humanity's memory, reminding us of the inherent risks of nuclear energy. The Chernobyl event highlighted the urgent need for stringent safety measures and transparency in nuclear operations worldwide. It has significantly influenced policy changes, pushing nations to invest more in renewable energy sources and to think twice before embarking on nuclear projects. The region itself bears the deep scars of this disaster, with vast areas transformed into ghost towns, a poignant reminder of the lives abruptly uprooted. The environmental repercussions from mutated wildlife to contaminated lands still persist, marking Chernobyl as a bleak testament to man-made disasters. Moreover, the disaster's impact on global consciousness is profound. It has become a symbol of nuclear disaster and a cautionary tale for future generations. Chernobyl, a name that will forever echo in our minds, reminding us of the double-edged sword that is nuclear energy.